Want to listen to this Ivory Tower Boiler Room or True Crime in Academia episode ad-free? Head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room, to listen to all of our podcast episodes without any ads. You get access to our video episodes, our bonus episodes, and even more exclusive content, including merchandise. It only starts at $5 a month, so head on over to our Patreon. Again, it's patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And while you're at it, you know what would be such a help is if you could rate and review the Ivory Tower Boiler Room on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And make sure that you follow us and share out our podcast to all of your friends. It truly does help. And I want to thank you all. It means so much that you're listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hey, true crime friends, I'm back from my vacation anyway. I know, I feel like I wasn't nearly as excited coming back from, like, the break, but I do feel like there was a difference between the break and my vacation because, to be honest, like, I haven't been on, like, longer than a few days, like, actual, like, vacation in, like, 5 years. So the fact that I was able to get away with my boo thing and just enjoy, even though I have to say the weather wasn't fully cooperative, we really only got like one good beach day. If some of you saw my posts, you know that. But yeah, I mean, we really just made the best of the boardwalk. We went down the shore, for those of you who don't know. We went to a place called Wildwood in New Jersey. For those of you in the area, you know the popularity, sort of the Jersey Shore towns and whatnot. So that was where we went. Like I said, we had a blast. It was wonderful. But I'm happy to be back. And even though it was only like less than a week, I feel like I was away longer, or at least that's how my brain feels. It feels like I've been away longer from my vacation than I did from the actual like month-long break that we had. So, yeah, but I feel great. I feel refreshed. We might actually be trying to go down the shore tomorrow, depending on how the weather is. I also tried skimboarding while I was down there. I've never done it before. As a kid, I always did boogie boarding and, was always really comfortable with that, but never like actually standing on something while it's moving. So that was interesting. I did fall once, and that was probably the only time that I was actually getting on the board properly. But yeah, no, it was really exciting. I'm excited to do it again. And yeah, it was just really great. Some things that weren't great. In Pennsylvania, and I was going to do this for the news update. I meant to, and I just completely spaced and forgot, but I still want to draw attention to it. There is currently an escaped convict in Pennsylvania riding around right now. I don't know if any of you have heard about this story. The man's name, and give me 1 second to pull it up, Danilo Cavalcante. And again, we all know how much I suck at names, so that is my best pronunciation of that. He escaped, I believe it was from Chester Prison in Pennsylvania recently. And we're now in, like, the 9th day of this. I mean, I'm not in Pennsylvania, but I'm in New Jersey. So, like, I'm fairly close. And my sister's in Pennsylvania. So I worry. Hopefully, though, this will be resolved soon. From what I've seen as far as the news stories, the newspapers and stuff, they've been saying that, he's kind of, like, out on his own, doesn't really have many resources. So, and with the fact that, his picture is basically plastered everywhere, everyone knows where he is, it seems like he's kind of doing his best that he can, like in Danny Rolling fashion, trying to live out in the wilderness. But obviously, his resources are dwindling and his access to them is going to be close to impossible. So hopefully this will be resolved shortly. This next not so great thing that I'm very upset about. Actually, I want to shout out our new intern, because yes, we have interns again. Very excited. But one of our new interns, her name is Sarah. She and I, during our meeting this morning that I semi-derailed, were talking about the Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner divorce that's currently happening. When I first found out the news, I was really hoping that they were rumors, because I thought, I really have no stake in their relationship, honestly. I just thought they were a cute couple, and honestly, I don't want to see really anyone who's married unless, it's obvious that they're not right for each other. But even still, you don't ever hope for a marriage to go south. You hope that they can beat all the odds and stand the test of time and truly be together forever. And that's how I felt about them. So the fact that they are officially filing for divorce, or at least Joe has retained a lawyer and has officially filed, obviously I was upset about that. But the main thing that Sarah and I were kind of bonding on was the narrative that's being spun as if Sophie Turner is some sort of bad mother. Like, excuse me? Like, I know TMZ reported that Joe has had the children for the past couple months because Sophie's in London. She's in the UK, or not London maybe, but she's in the UK recording Joan right now. So she's working, and as a working actress who, mind you, really hasn't acted in anything since Game of Thrones ended. And since Game of Thrones has ended, she married Joe and had 2 kids. So, their oldest is 3. Their youngest is over a year. So, I don't like the notion of shitting on her because she's working right now. But also, we don't know their agreement beforehand. They could have had plans to meet up at certain points. Like, maybe she was going to fly back. He was going to fly over there. But because of the arguments and whatnot, maybe that didn't happen. Who knows? But also, I think there's a couple things that people fail to realize. The first thing I think they fail to realize is that Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas are not a normal couple. They do not have your normal 9 to 5, or even even some of the more unconventional types of jobs that most normal everyday Americans have. They don't have that. So the notion that they have sort of like a steady schedule type of thing, can be home as much as they want, that's not in existence for them. Like, Joe Jonas is currently on tour with his brothers right now. And as I said earlier, Sophie's in the UK filming, being an actress and filming and doing her job. And for some of the people who do travel for work, I think can sympathize with this. Like, you can't bring your kids with you. Like, it's not just that easy, and I think people think because in the acting world it might, or they have this illusion that it's easier. I don't think it's easier, especially when you have children that young, because they need your constant attention. And honestly, in most cases, especially at that young, mom is number one. You need mom for absolutely everything, or you want mom for absolutely everything, because up until this point in your life, mom was literally providing you pretty much everything. Now, I'm not trying to hate on dads or diss on dads. I do feel like the narrative is being spun too much that dads aren't doing enough, because I really do think that fathers, especially in this situation, from what I've gathered based off of everything that I've heard, he is a very present dad, and there are other dads who are very present as parents. However, though, I also think at this point we don't need to highlight the fact that a father is being a parent, like the narrative is being spun right now. So, because it feels like they're trying to give him a gold star for, being with his kids for all of this time while she's overseas working, So, it irks my soul so much. The other thing I think that people fail to realize, and like I was kind of saying earlier, people who travel for work know this, is that it's just hard to bring your kid, but also it's really not that healthy for a child to be moved around so much as far as psychologically is concerned, because the constant moving is a level of instability, and that can sometimes play a role in the psychological development of children. You know, again, remember, I really don't have any sort of psychological degree. This is just all what I remember from classes. So my knowledge is, Psych 101. So according to that, obviously that's not okay. So I can see why she might not want to have the kids with her, because that's traveling from somewhere that isn't their home, because their home is technically the U.S. And, even though they're traveling with him, at least they're still in the same country with things that they're still very familiar with. Whereas if they were going to go to the UK, not that it's that different, but, you have people talking with accents. Obviously, mommy talks with an accent, but it's a lot of change. And given the, that she's working and she's on a set, and so, they might be on said set where things aren't necessarily reality, I can see why, if they decided against, which I'm pretty sure they did, and like I said, I think the media is just spinning this. I think they probably had the children stay with Joe in the U.S. for the best interest of the children, as for them to not have to move around so much and to not be around so much in familiarity, basically, is where I was getting on with that whole rant. Because, yes, I'm just so irked that they're trying to make it seem like Sophie is a bad mom, and I don't think that's the case. And, just to reiterate what I said earlier, Joe is not babysitting his fucking kids. They are his, like I said, they are his fucking kids. So, that's what we call parenting. The other thing Sarah and I talked about was how if the narrative was flipped, so what if, in fact, Sophie was the one who was with the kids for the few months and Joe was on tour, going around, whatever, working. No one would say shit about the fact that he's working. Because, again, she's home. It's just this misogynistic view that's being turned. And now I've seen that, like, Taylor Swift songs are getting called into question, or at least the ones that they think are written about Joe. We know the one, Mr. Perfectly Fine, is mainly confirmed to be about him. Sophie actually posted about it in her Instagram stories. I think Taylor just redid it recently for, 'cause she's been redoing all of her stuff. And some people are kind of looking at the lyrics to suggest that maybe he is constantly looking out for his image, which it kind of does seem like he is. But at the same time, what pisses me off is that for the entire 3 years that they've had children, 4 years that they've had children, we have not once seen their picture. But yet the day after their divorce is filed, that Joe files for divorce, you can see him having lunch or breakfast, whatever it was, with his 2 daughters out and about. Just so happens the paparazzi were there. I don't know. I'm not saying he facilitated anything, but I do find that super sketch. And, some of you might be like, well, Sophie accidentally posted. Yeah, but she also pleaded with people to not share that, like any of the images or the video was that she accidentally posted. I haven't heard Joe going after Page 6 or any of these other news outlets for, they blurred the pictures but of the faces of the kids, but still, like, I haven't seen him being so, like, upset or vocal about being upset that the paparazzi were able to capture his children's in pictures. Again, I don't know, but I don't like it, and we spent a little too much time on that. Let's get into the news update, everyone. So this first case actually happened over Labor Day this past Monday. Roughly 50,000 teachers in South Korea took a leave of absence and rallied in Seoul to demand better protection of their rights and draw attention to parental harassment, which has been the leading cause of suicide among the teachers in South Korea. This comes after an elementary school teacher was found dead of suicide in July. It was stated that this happened shortly after the teacher had expressed anxiety over complaints made by a parent. Now, from what I gathered from this article and some other brief research, it seems that parents would indiscriminately make complaints about child abuse as far as disciplinary actions from teachers were concerned. So, essentially they were just making up things. Or maybe, I don't want to say they weren't, but it seems from what we're going to further discuss a little bit that, these claims, it just seemed like they were just really picky parents who kind of were like, you don't get to pick how you discipline my kid, which to some extent I completely 100% agree with. If I was a parent, I shouldn't say as a parent, but if I was a parent, I would obviously not want my child to be abused, right? However, though, this doesn't seem to be the case most of the time, and it just seems that it's parents who are just angry from the disciplinary action that their child got. Whether it's because they don't believe that happened, or if, maybe they're trying to get revenge or whatever on a teacher for a grade or whatever, Again, that's not verified. That's just what I've gathered from what I've been researching and things like that. It also appeared, though, that teachers could be harassed by the parents via their personal phones. Meaning, not only are they getting harassed during school hours by these parents, but then these parents are also harassing them after the fact. And again, if there's actual abuse being taken place, that should be persecuted. But if you're pissed because your child's teacher put them in line because they misbehaved and you're harassing them to the point of suicide, go fuck yourself. Your child, is not that fucking important. I promise you. Get over yourself and get over your high horse of whatever pedestal you've put in your child. Oh my God. Ugh, I hate that shit. Anyway, thankfully, President Yoon Suk Yeol, names. It's my best attempt, okay? Stated that they have ordered officials to listen to teachers and to work harder to protect their rights. The Education Ministry is currently working towards strengthening legal measures and taking steps to protect their teachers' rights. One of the things that they are working on is encouraging teachers not to take calls from parents on their personal phones. However, no time frame has been given for when their full plan will eventually roll out. Over the past 6 years in South Korea, approximately 100 public school teachers have committed suicide. 57 of those taught at elementary schools. And as I said, those were pretty much linked to the harassment from parents, which, if you're a parent, I can have a sort of understanding for your extreme protectiveness of your child. However, as long as they are not being abused, mistreated, or, missed, unattended to, whatever, you name it, almost, I can understand. You want to make sure your child succeeds in school. You want to make sure they do well. You want to make sure that they can be the absolute best that they can be. However, if a teacher is doing nothing to impede on that, and you are mad for whatever other reason, go fuck yourself. And stop. Maybe think about what would actually be best for your child. Because honestly, the real world is not going to take your phone calls. Let's be honest. Your kid graduates college, gets a job. Your kid complains about how his boss doesn't, or yells at them, or does this, or does that. Not to say that you should be yelled at in the workplace. I'm just throwing that out as a very brief example. but maybe their child sees something unfair in the workforce that they don't like, but that, it just is what it is, And it's all really just because they're shitty. Because you, as the parent, can't let them experience anything hard. That's basically all I'm saying. As parents, you should be allowing your children experience difficult shit. And sometimes that comes in the form of being disciplined by your teacher. Long story short, that's where that rant was going. Be nicer to your teachers. They're the ones watching your children while you go out and have adult time. And by adult time, I mean work. Not to say that that's great, but, you all know the alternative of staying home with your children 100% of the time. So, be grateful that, there are teachers out there who care how your child turns out. And, that they don't want them to be a shitty human being, That's just basically the vibe I got from this. But we need to move on. Now, in exciting news, at least for me anyway, Danny Masterson is going to jail, people! Yesterday, the actor got 30 years to life in prison for 2 counts of rape. If any of you aren't familiar with his case or don't remember, Danny Masterson, who played Hyde on That 70s Show, was arrested in 2020 for the rapes of 3 women spanning between 2001 and 2003. The first trial started in 2022, and sadly, it resulted in a mistrial because of a deadlocked jury. And like I said, this was just for one of the 3 counts of rape. He was then officially convicted of the other 2 counts earlier this year. And while I'm glad that he has been convicted, obviously, I do feel horrible for the woman whose case was left in, or who was resulted in a deadlock. Because I wish she could have just gotten the same justice that the other 2 women had gotten. And obviously, just because her case ended in a mistrial, that does not mean that Masterson did not rape her and that what she said was not true. It just means that the jury couldn't decide. Now, for anyone wondering why maybe these women didn't come forward sooner, because, like I said, their rapes took place in the early 2000s. First of all, it's none of your damn business. Second of all, along with Masterson, these women were also Scientologists. And according to the Scientology religion, you don't report crimes like this to the police. Instead, you report them to the authorities within Scientology, the higher-ups, if you will. So as you can see, based off of where we are now, when these women, because they went forward and they told these authorities within Scientology, and clearly these authorities did nothing. Shocker. And honestly, that's not, that's only one of the fucked up things in Scientology. And I have a lot of opinions about this. I've listened to Leah Remini's podcast that she has with Mike Rinder, who was a former higher up who worked very closely with David Miscavige, who is Scientology's current leader. Yeah, I don't like it. Maybe I'll do a Patreon episode about it in the future, just so you can all understand why I can't stand this religion so much. Oh my God, I wonder if I become a suppressive person after this. To be fair, I might actually like that. That would actually kind of be cool. Anyway, thankfully, like I said, he's been sentenced from 30 years to life. So most likely he's going to die in prison, and that's what that bitch deserves, to be fair. This last story, I wanted to end the news update on like a happy/funny note. And this story I just found to be so adorable, and you can just bet 100% that this story involves an animal. So I initially saw this story on NPR's Instagram, but I did more research through NBC News, which is what you'll see in the sources below. I couldn't find the exact NPR article linked to or related to that post, so I went with that. But essentially, officers in Norfolk, Nebraska responded to a strange call that they had received. Calls had been coming into dispatch on August 31st at around 10:05 a.m. from people claiming that a driver had a cow with them in the passenger seat of their car. Obviously, this is not a proper way to transport animals of that size, so that's why they had to get involved. But at first, officers assumed that it would be just, like a calf, a baby cow, a baby bull, an adorable little baby. But oh my God, were they wrong. When police spotted the car, they were in absolute shock to see a fully grown bull sticking out of the passenger side. Now, I've posted the pictures to social media, and if you scroll to the show notes, or if you scroll in the show notes to the sources at the bottom for the news update, you will see the NBC link, and there is a video within that link, so you can actually watch this happening. But, I mean, this, like I said, he is massive, this bull, and he has long horns. His name is Howdy Doody, and he's a 9-year-old, 2,200-pound, half Longhorn, half Watusi bull. So that explains the Longhorns, because he's Longhorn. And he has been a regular attraction, Howdy Doody, at parades and fairs throughout Nebraska. Now, just to give you a quick visual, like I said, either look on social media or scroll through these show notes, look for the video so you can see what I'm talking about. But just to give you an idea of the visual of what is happening here, what the police rolled up to when they pulled this man over, who was identified to be a man named Lee Meyer, or Mayer, Meyer. Mayer? Sorry, my brain's not working right now. Again, vacation brain. Anyway, it's his pet. So they pulled this man over, and essentially, like, the entire, sorry, I just hit the mic with my tooth. The entire roof on the passenger side is just completely gone. And there are, like, these yellow bars instead of doors. Like, it literally looks like a makeshift barn pen. Just passenger seat sized. Honestly, looking at this picture, like, when you guys see it, you're just like, this looks like a clown car almost. Like, it is just insane that this huge, I mean, like I said, he's 2,200 pounds. Like, he is a huge ass bull, and he is just, like, chilling passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. Just kidding. But millennials out there, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, needless to say, police were just absolutely shocked. So when they asked, like, why this, what was going on and why he was driving Howdy Doody, he stated that this was something that had been on his mind for years. And it wasn't until that he told his granddaughters that he wanted to do this, and then they in turn doubted him, that he decided that he wanted to go through with the necessary car modifications. Apparently, according to him, he has been doing this for a while and hasn't had a problem until his stop on Wednesday. Now, of course, nothing happened. No charges were filed. Police let him off with a warning and just told him to be careful on his way home, to take Howdy Doody, the huge bull, home. But, I mean, like I said, you have to see the pictures. So please go to all the socials, see if you can look at the pictures. Like I said, if you can't, go down to the bottom, go to the source. I know this is like the 50 million time I've said it, but you have to see it to believe it. All right, that is all we have for the news update. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with this week's case.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I'm so excited to be talking about Broadview Press. You might be asking, what is Broadview Press, Andrew? Broadview is an independent academic publisher in the humanities that produces high quality, pedagogically useful books for use in university and college classrooms. They publish in the humanities mainly English studies, writing, philosophy, and history, just to name a few genres. And recently, I had on Dr. Jason Holt, who wrote all about the philosophy of sport. And what better summer episode than to talk about what happens when a philosopher dissects the beautiful aesthetics of sporting culture? In the spring, I had on doctors Kyle Stedman and Tanya Rodriguez to talk about what is sound writing, how to make audio projects in the college classroom, how to even have your students create podcasts. And then in the winter, I had on Dr. Jeffrey Weinstock. He talked about analyzing pop culture. Yes, I even sneak in some Real Housewives questions and how to teach composition and make it fun. He uses this whole metaphor about being a mad scientist in this gothic lab. And in the fall, I had on Dr. Ann Stevens, and she talked about literary theory and criticism. And yes, the university season is upon us. So, what better way to talk about the college classroom than to actually understand what is literary theory? That's a wonderful episode for all of you out there who teach literary studies. I love Broadview Press. Make sure you use their exclusive code. It's Ivory Tower on broadviewpress.com. You get 20% off all, all Broadview Press publications. Okay, until the next Broadview Press interview. And now back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Hi, everyone. This is Andrew, and I am interrupting what I know is such an exciting Ivory Tower Boiler Room episode to tell you all about one of my favorite podcasts. It's called That Old Gay Classic Cinema, and it's hosted by Christian Garcia. Christian is joined with guest co hosts to talk about classic cinema films that we know and love, and he analyzes them through a queer lens. So he's talked about The Sound of Music, Alfred Hitchcock, The Wizard of Oz, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, and recently, Hello, Dolly. I actually was on his first ever episode to talk about my love of The Sound of Music and playing Captain Von Trapp in my high school musical. Then I was joined with Mary DiPipi, the host of True Crime in Academia, and our friend Travis Roundtree to talk about Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Mary just had Christian on True Crime in Academia to talk about female poisoners, including the evil queen from Snow White and actual real life female poisoners. So, Christian's podcast is the best. You must add it to your listen list. After you listen to this episode, make sure you head over to That Old Gay Classic Cinema on Apple and Spotify. Make sure you follow him on Instagram at That Old Gay Classic Cinema. And he's also on TikTok. Don't forget TikTok. Okay, I can't wait for you all to listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema. And now back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room.
So, I feel like it has been a while since here at True Crime and Academia we have covered a multi part case. So, coming back from vacation, I decided let's do it. So, for the next few weeks, we will be focusing on one of the most famous kidnappings of the 1970s. She is the granddaughter of newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst. And this case is definitely an interesting one. There are some crazy twists and turns, so we are going to cover this case in 3 parts. So buckle up and get ready, because this is the kidnapping of Patty Hearst. Patricia Campbell Hearst Shaw was born on February 20th, 1954, in Los Angeles, California, to parents Randolph A. Hearst and Catherine Wood Campbell. Patricia is the third of Catherine and Randolph's 5 daughters. So needless to say, it's a pretty big household. And also, a lot of girls, a lot of women, a lot of estrogen flowing around. And I mean, in my household, it was me and 2 other women and my poor father. So, like, my dad has had to live with 3 women the majority of his life, most likely. And of course I'm still here, so he's still outnumbered. But yeah, I mean, like I said, at the height of it, with the three of us, it was I'm not dissing on my gender. I think women are wonderful, but sometimes, especially I feel like in a family situation, women can be cruel. So, it's like, and it's also like that saying says, you hurt the people you love the most. So, I can't imagine, and especially she seemed to be like, she's the literal middle child, you know, so I'm sure she definitely had some, I'm not going to say middle child tendencies, but just like, there are certain things that occur with the second or middle child in a family. And I'm not saying that this is with every middle child, but it seems that like middle, second child has, or at least feels some sort of type of neglect anyway. So I don't know, maybe she felt like maybe she was overlooked by her parents because of her siblings. I don't know. Again, but for all I know, maybe the middle child syndrome didn't exist for her, and those circumstances didn't happen. Who knows? But as I mentioned, Patricia is the granddaughter of newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst. Now, if you don't know who he is super quick and easy to look up. You will find a slew of information on the man. Good Lord. Since this episode is not about him, I'm just gonna give you the cliff notes. So basically, like I said, he was a newspaper mogul. He, eventually got rich off of that and became friends with a bunch of celebrities, owned a ton of property. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I wanted to look this up before, but there is a property that he owned, and it had a very famous name. And basically, I mean, besides the fact that it was huge, like it's practically an island, he also had exotic animals, like basically like a zoo, which I don't agree with. I don't care, no matter how well, supposedly they're, and I don't think it's okay to own exotic animals. That's my opinion. I don't think anyone should own them. I watched Tiger King, and as fascinating as it is, and as much as I would love to pet and love all of the baby animals, exotic or not, I know that it's not okay. So, like, in any situation when you are, or if you are asked or presented with the opportunity to touch an animal, sadly, that most likely means that they are in an abusive, unsafe situation. I hate to burst anyone's bubble about that, but that is essentially how I feel about this place. But the whole moral of this is that he was stupid rich and basically controlled the whole newspaper industry. And for any movie buffs out there, I know my friend Christian Garcia from That Old Gay Classic Cinema, I know he knows this. But yeah, William Randolph Hearst is who Citizen Kane was based off of. Movie buffs, like I said, y'all know about this. Rosebud. So Patricia's father, Randolph, as you might have guessed, was one of William Randolph Hearst's 5 sons. I mean, you see, he gave him his middle name as his first name. But he also left his 5 sons an inheritance. However, though, he apparently left the majority of his wealth to the trustees of his company. And I'm only mentioning this just because while Patricia and her family were considered to be rich, because they were, there's no mistaking that, it's just, had they gotten the whole, they just could have been more rich based off of how he would have distributed the inheritance. However, though, they weren't fully in the limelight. Still, though, given her status as an heiress to literally one of the biggest newspaper companies in the entire country, if not the world, she was able to attend various private schools in LA, San Mateo, Crystal Springs, and Monterey, California. She then went on to take classes at Menlo College, but then eventually transferred to the University of California in Berkeley, where she studied art history. As you can see, I mean, her privilege, I mean, as far as access to education, you know, is quite high. You know, not everyone can go to these types of private schools and things. I mean, University of California is a very prestigious college, you know, but also I feel like even, you know, I don't get the impression that she didn't take advantage, excuse me, I hit my mic, didn't take advantage of the educational opportunities. I mean, it seemed like that she was intelligent, and, you know, I haven't seen anything to prove otherwise.
LGBT stories are universal, but each one speaks to the individual heart and soul of the writer telling it. Do you have a story to tell? Or have you been moved recently by an LGBT book, film, painting, television show, or other form of media? Then the Gay and Lesbian Review wants to hear from you. The GNLR believes in bringing awareness to queer art and artists through reviews, commentary, and thought pieces in which the author relates their personal lives to a particular piece of art, a novel, a movie, or what have you. In addition to the print magazine, the GNLR also publishes articles on its blog as well as personal essays on its popular Here's My Story section on glreview.org. That's glreview.org. To learn more about submitting an article for the GNLR, visit their writer's guidelines. The link is located at the bottom of the homepage. And if you have any questions, email publisher Stephen Hemrick. That's STEPHEN.HEMRICK at glreview.org. The GNLR and its readers can't wait to see what you have to say.
Hey, True Crime and Ivory Tower Boiler Room listeners. Listen, the holidays are literally right around the corner, and I know that some of you are scrambling to find that gift for that person on your list who is just so difficult to buy for because they have everything, or you're sitting there in your home and you're realizing that there is this space in your house that just is begging to be decorated, but you don't know what to put there. Well, I'm here to tell you that Mandy Made It has the answers to all of your holiday needs. Mandy Made It makes the best handmade crochet and crochet items I have ever seen. And I mean, literally, she can make anything. The customization options are literally endless. So go to @MandyMadeIt on Instagram and search Mandy Made It on Facebook. Slide into her DMs and order your customized holiday gifts and decorations today. That's @MandyMadeIt on Instagram. And Mandy is spelled MANDEE. Once again, search Mandy Made It on Instagram and Facebook. Slide in her DMs and order your gifts or holiday decorations today. At some point in time, and I couldn't find when, but Patricia started seeing a guy named Stephen Weed. Cool last name, sidebar. And the two actually did get engaged. The two lived together in an apartment in Berkeley, and I couldn't find if he was also a student there, but it just seemed like it was just the best place for her to commute to school. On February 4th, 1974, Patricia and Steve were just hanging out in their apartment. Patty was a sophomore at this time. There are some conflicting sources as to the exact time. Some said it was during the night, and some said it was during the morning. But at some point on this day, 3 to 5, because again, conflicting sources, 3 to 5 individuals entered Patty and Stephen's apartment. These individuals beat up Stephen and they captured Patricia. They blindfolded her and threw her into the trunk of a stolen car that the kidnappers had parked outside. It was also stated in one source that one of the neighbors who saw what was going on was also injured for trying to intervene. Now, according to witnesses, aka the other neighbors, Patricia fought against her kidnappers, but sadly, it was no use. At some point, they stated that they saw Stephen running out of the house, screaming and attempting to chase after the car as it drove off. At this point, though, the other neighbors had to take cover because the perpetrators of the kidnapping were actually firing shots from the car. I mean, I can't even begin to put myself in Stephen's shoes. Like, that must be some of the most helpless and terrifying moments, you know, of his life, as I'm sure it would have been for me, you know, if I had been in that situation, of course. You know, again, I can only speculate / imagine. But it also makes me think of a time, and I wasn't even involved or around at the time, but there was an incident on my street. It was, I mean, in some ways, thankfully, a case of mistaken identity. Apparently, there had been some sort of, like, drug dealers in our neighborhood, and I guess some people were pissed at that person and shot at a few houses. Now, on my street, which was not the right street to begin with. Thankfully, no one was injured. Nothing happened. You know, police, of course, were called. But at the time, I was like a senior in high school. And thankfully, I was already down the shore with some friends. But I remember my mom thinking, because she said this to me. She was just like, thank God you were down the shore, because at the time that the shooting occurred, like, was the time that normally you would have been coming home from having hung out with your friends. So, like, whenever I think or, like, hear about any sort of, like, shooting in a neighborhood, like, my brain just immediately goes there, which is weird because, again, like, even though I was not there for it, like, I still feel some sort of fear, you know, I guess, because of that what if, you know, what if I hadn't been down the shore? What if, you know, we were, you know, me and my friends were all home and local? And what if, you know, I had come home at that time? So, you know, it's just, for me, I was just like, oh my God, that's fucking terrifying, you know? But anyway, 3 days later, the group of individuals revealed themselves in a communique to a Berkeley radio station. They called themselves the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA, and announced that they were the ones who had kidnapped Patricia Hearst and were holding her as a, quote, prisoner of war, end quote. They also denounced the, quote, establishment, end quote. Now, the SLA was a small leftist radical group that was formed in 1973 in Berkeley, California by a man named Donald DeFries. The group was started initially as a collaboration between convicts and prison activists, which I feel like should be, like, innocently enough. Like, I know people here like, oh my God, convicts, prison activists. Like, oh my God, they don't know what's going on. These people are terrible, blah, 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 blah. You know, but we seriously do in this country have a very serious problem when it comes to our prisons and our prison system. And, I mean, that's not even getting to the problems with the justice system. You know, within just the prison system, there are a lot of problems. I mean, in this country, we have for-profit prisons. And if you don't think that's disgusting, then I'm not a specialist, but I would I would just hope that at that point you would seek help, because clearly there is something wrong with your lack of empathy. I understand certain people commit crimes. They should be able to face their consequences. I'm not saying that. But also, you know, I also do think that people should be treated like humans. You know, I don't know. But anyway, this was how this all started. Now, its leader, Donald DeFries, he was actually the only black member of this group. The rest were white middle-class men and women. from what I could see, it seems like there was a total of maybe about 8 to 10 members in total at any given time. But all of the members adopted Swahili names and got weapons, mainly guns. Prior to Patricia Hearst's kidnapping, the group was also known for the assassination of Marcus Foster. And Marcus Foster was the first black man who was the superintendent of schools in Oakland, California. And this happened, or his assassination occurred on November 6, 1973. 2 of the members of, the SLA were arrested for the murder. Now, the SLA wanted to take things further, of course, because if you're a radical group, of course, you have to keep taking things to the next level, right? Well, they decided they wanted to instigate a full-on guerrilla war against the U.S. government. I don't like to judge, but it was at this point in my research that I felt that maybe the majority of these people had some sort of mental issue that they needed to work through. Because, that's a suicide mission, just saying. Now, to do this, they needed to start with the kidnapping of Patricia because they knew that she had a powerful and wealthy family. Now, I don't know exactly how they figured out, who she was specifically. Because, again, this was, before internet times. If it was today, we all know that we could have easily been, Google search Patricia Hearst. And, we would have gotten a million sources, as I did during this research, would have come up. But back then, that was not the case. So at some point, they figured out how to track William Randolph Hearst's relatives, and they just so happened to pick her. And they found out that where she was living was close to them because, like I said, her apartment was in Berkeley, California. Now, it was also said that they had found this out, once they figured out who she was, that they were able to find out her location and address and other information through the college's registrar. So, I know that the schools since then have, tightened down, but that's how they found her. Even though, like I said, her family was known. So I guess, again, like I said, lack of technology, her family's famous. It was probably easier just because of that. Now, I sincerely kind of loathe the fact that I am someone who gives credit where credit is due. And I hate to say this, but I feel that the SLA were kind of smart in, their plan with kidnapping Patricia Hearst. And, again, I don't... From a logistics point, I go, okay, that was intelligent. But from a moral and every other type of standpoint, obviously, I do not agree. And by me, or what I mean by the logistics standpoint, I mean as far as strategy is concerned, she would be the best person to kidnap. She is a college student. So for one, she is out, she is enjoying her life, but she is also still technically considered young and, quote, naive. Not that anyone said that of her, I'm just, putting that in there. Because I feel like that's how most people feel of college students, that they're more naive. And that's not 100% true, But for her, obviously, though, in this situation where they're where this is a legitimate, radical group, technically terrorist group, they want to make a big impact without necessarily making a huge splash. And by that, I mean, because she was the grandchild, they're like, yes, we'll take her because there's limited protection and there's limited people around her who could actually do something about it. Whereas her father, Randolph, and her grandfather, William, are obviously surrounded by people all of the time, but not only just surrounded by people all of the time, they're also surrounded by protection or security. which was something I read in my research that Patricia's parents felt that their daughters didn't need, because again, they didn't think like that something like this would happen. I don't fault them for that. Again, they had 5 daughters, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Especially when you're someone who's, it seems with them, they tried to keep their children out of the limelight. They tried to keep them out of the press. So I can see how they're probably figuring, oh, well, if no one really knows about them, then why did they need to be protected, Again, I don't think it was like negligence. I just don't think that they thought it was necessary. However, sadly, it was. In addition to the communique from the SLA, the radio station also released the first tape recording of Patricia. And that is where I'm going to leave you guys this week. Next week, we are going to get into way much more depth of this kidnapping and what happened thereafter. So, please do not forget to comment, like, subscribe on all of the platforms that you listen to True Crime in Academia and the Ivory Tower Boiler Room on. And until next time, my loves, I will see you later.
Thank you so much for listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. This is Andrew Rimby, the host and director of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room podcast. I am joined with Mary DiPipi, our chief contributor and host of True Crime in Academia. Please, if you're not, make sure that you follow the Ivory Tower Boiler Room and True Crime in Academia on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok too. Remember our TikTok. That's where all the exciting video clips are posted. Make sure that you join our Patreon if you want more Ivory Tower Boiler Room and True Crime in Academia content. All the video interviews are on our Patreon. All of our bonus episodes are on Patreon. And it just means so much for you to join for $5 a month. You unlock all of our bonus episodes. And also, it just helps support the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Thank you so much for giving Mary and I a needed jolt of caffeine for coffee. Thanks for the $5. Head to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. We cannot wait for you all to listen to our summer season. There are so many exciting episodes. And we're also celebrating 3 years of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room podcast. So, without further ado, thanks for listening. Make sure you listen to the next episode next week. And have a wonderful summer season, everyone. Okay, bye now.